Dave Borzillo, welcome to the chat. Welcome to this podcast. Tell me, who is Dave Borzillo in a quick intro so the audience can know who are you?
Yeah, thanks, Hector, and thanks for having me on. I started off in engineering. My undergraduate degree is in mechanical engineering. Don't ask me to fix cars or anything, but I really got into computer software. I ended up doing a lot of writing software for automating engineering design, and then I got into e-commerce, and now I'm back in aerospace and defense. But along the way, this is where I discovered Agile, right? You start off as a new person out of college, and you're so enamored with tools and wondering, software is great and it can do all this stuff. And then as you get into your career, you're thinking, it's people, right? Like, how do we communicate better? How do we collaborate better? So that's what led me to become part of an Agile team, and now today become an Agile coach and trainer and help other companies, other teams to understand Agile and to work in Agile ways to get the outcomes that the team and the company is looking for.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. So, Dave, you have a book called
Yes.
United Agility.
hmm
How do you start, like at some point, saying, well, I need to write a book? Do you have a bunch of notes or do you have a topic? Or how is this process to start writing? And then could you talk a little about your book?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'd love to. Yeah. It started last year. I've been doing Agile training, coaching, being on Agile teams for over a decade now. And I'm very fortunate that in the company I work for, or the classes that I teach, people want to know what is Agile, and it's such a big question, right? So I started writing notes, and I started all of the stuff in my head I wanted to get down into documentation, and I wanted to help. Basically, if you're new to Agile, if you don't know what Agile is, I hope the book will explain it to you. And if you've been doing Agile for a while, take another look. I start with the Agile Manifesto, the values and the principles, but then I also talk about the journey in Agile. Everybody thinks, Agile as a delivery framework, and it's been proven it's a very good delivery framework. But now, how does an organization become Agile? How does a company become Agile? What are the challenges there? And I noticed, so I call it United Agility because it's about uniting the teams with the leadership of a company. And into the book, I talk about different aspects like visualization. How do you communicate the goals of a company to your teams? How does a team communicate progress to their leadership? And it's a lot more about and it's not one set of solutions, so I don't give you a lot of answers, but I give you some ideas to try. Collaboration is a very important part of it, and how you collaborate within your team or within your organization, that's an important part of United Agility as well.
Got it. Awesome. So we will leave the link over here in the description of the video, and hopefully we can get some persons interested in the book and get to buy it. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Dave, you mentioned that Agile covers a lot, right?
hmm
And a big challenge that I have all the time is when anyone asks me, "What do you do with Agile? Like, what's an Agile coach?" How would you explain to a person or maybe a small kid or someone that doesn't understand Agile at all? How would you explain what Agile is?
Yeah, great question. And especially like Agile Coach, right? What is that all about? So, if there's somebody new, I explained to them that in 2001, the Agile Manifesto was written, and they wrote it because they were looking for better ways of working. I help teams, I help companies find better ways of doing things. Um, it's not, I'm not an expert in software. I'm not an expert in hardware. I'm not an expert in medical devices, but I work with people to figure out how to collaborate together, how to reflect together, how to share information better together. And all of that adds up to working better together. And if that happens, you should see happy teams, you should see companies with customers that are happy, right? And happy leadership.
That's a great way to put it in simple words. Thank you for sharing. You mentioned the Agile Manifesto, right? We cannot
hmm
talk about agility without the Agile Manifesto, but
Exactly.
this was written like 20 years ago.
Yes.
How relevant is the Agile Manifesto today, 20 years later?
Yeah, that's a really great question, right? Because if you look at the history of Agile, it started in the late 1990s when you had all of these different frameworks, Scrum, XP, etc. And the fact that 17 leaders in technology got together and they agreed on one document that kind of explains this better way of working idea. And I'm a little bit of a historian with Agile, right? So I've watched a lot of YouTube videos of the original manifesto signatories, and a lot of what I see is like, well, I don't remember who exactly said this, but we all agreed to it. And to get 17 people, especially leaders in technology, to get 17 people agree on something, and nobody talks about, well, one or two people on the side really didn't agree to it, but we still went with it anyway. Or like, I remember exactly who said this was my idea and I think it was a great idea. Like, you don't see that. I mean, these are just 17 people. It's probably, I don't know if it's ever going to happen again in history. Originally around 30 people were invited. Only the 17 that showed up actually made it. But those were it's an amazing document that shows unity, that shows there's a problem, and it doesn't really get into the how to do it, except for Agile principle number 12, which is at regular intervals, reflecting on the work done. That's a practice that you see in a lot of the frameworks. But other than that, you're talking about principles and values. And something I've learned as an Agile coach, I can teach people practices all day. I can teach you how to write a backlog. I can teach you how to do a sprint. But if I don't do a good job setting a foundation of the values and principles, there's no guarantee. The Agile Manifesto talks about motivated individuals. And in my experiences, when I start with motivated individuals who are interested in Agile, I get much more success. I can go back 6 months later, they're still doing Agile. Maybe not exactly how I'm doing it, but they're still implementing the values and the principles of Agile. So the Agile Manifesto is a very important piece that, yeah, it's 20 years, and maybe the way we're going to do Agile will change in the next 10 or 20 years, but I think the values and the principles are still going to be there.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. I agree with you. Um, Talking about these principles and values, which value or principle would you say that is the most commonly not well implemented, or that the companies are missing right now in your experience?
Yeah. So I would say the values and principles around collaboration. One of the things that you have to be careful of, especially with Scrum, is to basically do smaller waterfalls, right? So when we say waterfall, the old technique, we're going to do design first, then develop, then we're going to test, and then we're going to deliver. Well, sometimes, you teach teams Agile, well, they're still doing that, but now like at a month at a time. And it's where to be able to show teams that we want them to always look at the customer, right? And incorporate their feedback, include them in the process, because individual and interactions over processes and tools. I think another beauty of the Agile Manifesto is it never says these are the absolute truths. It says we're not saying processes and tools aren't important, but we're saying that individuals and how we interact are more important over the processes and tools. So I think sometimes, with new teams, they might fall into um, emphasizing more processes and tools and not more enough on the individuals and interactions. And it's hard because there's no one way to do it, right? It's going to depend on the company. It's going to depend on the people. But we like to, as coaches, right? We want to help them explore and find the ways that are going to work for them.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Um, so you mentioned Scrum, and you mentioned that, for example, there are a lot of teams that are doing mini waterfalls, right? We need to
Yeah.
avoid that. I have also seen this in many places. Um, what would be other indicators or other, hidden anti-patterns that probably teams looking at this video are saying, no, I do a really good version of Scrum, and it could be the other way, right? Which where should they look for, like, in hidden patterns or anti-patterns that they should be aware of?
So your sprint review or your sprint demo at the end, is the customer there? So a lot of teams think a really good sprint review is, hey, we spent 30 minutes and they didn't have any questions. They said they love it. That's a red flag
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
A good sprint review should provoke discussion. It should say, well, wait a minute. We thought we agreed to this, but what I see here, I was thinking something different. Now you just caught something that may save you a lot of time down the road. So that's where the sprint review and then the sprint retrospective too. Like some I don't know if you know Agile for Humans, you know, they wrote the book Fixing Your Scrum, and the Liberators talk about zombie Scrum, right? So are the retrospectives becoming too robotic and you're just going through the motions and you're not so yes, you can do the practices and you might think you're doing them well, but are you actually improving? Are the outcomes improving every time? And that's going to require, you're going to find out, you know, these are the challenges you're going to find out in every sprint, that, you know, it's not going to be perfect every time, but that's good because then that gives you opportunities to improve.
Yeah, and it would look like if everything is perfect, like, oh, there are no items in the retro, and there the review was perfect. It smells bad, right? It looks like
Exactly. Like
something.
nobody's
There's
perfect. Let's
something.
just face it.
Yeah,
Like if you hit 80%, right? Or we finished all the stories, or our burn down chart is a perfect straight line.
yeah,
That's a red flag. You're trying to make it look good for management, and that's not helping anybody. So let's just get rid of the burn down chart. Let's count
yeah,
stories, whatever. Let's do something else. But, you know, in the retro, like, you know, again, like I want to hear the customers actually say things like, I no, that's not what I was expecting, and that's not what I was thinking, and we really need to change what we're going to do in the next sprint. You know, those are the things that I want to hear when I coach teams on sprint reviews.
yeah, totally. Thank you. Um, so I have a question here around project timelines, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have some experience, you have a long career. So how have you seen that Scrum has changed the approach to project timelines? This is a challenge that I also have all the time, right? Management wants a date, right? And they
Yeah.
want a timeline. How do you deal with that in Scrum?
So that's great because, and you can't blame management, right? So they, you know, they have accountabilities to shareholders or, you know, executives or whatever. So it's a legitimate question. This is where I think typically you know, there's a roadmap, the idea of a roadmap where, hey, you know, for the next 3 months, here's what we think we're going to do every month. But more and more, I've been challenging teams to think more about what's the problem you're trying to solve, right? That's the goal. And we're saying that we can solve that, let's just say 3 months. Okay, great. As I stand here today, or as a team stands here today, with the skills and the knowledge we have, this is what we think we can do. But at the end of every sprint, we reserve the right to update that. Now, management, do you want us to hit a certain date, or do you want us to hit a certain set of features or functionality that we know is going to solve the problem? So these are discussions that have to be had in the beginning of the project, and everything and every sprint is up for re-examination and reevaluation. But the overall goal is not just about getting a product out the door, but how are we delivering value for our customer? And this is where you hear the term pivot a lot, right? So you go into it 3 sprints and you realize something you didn't know at the very beginning, and that's going to change things. Well, how are we going to pivot? But our North Star is always going to be, we're looking to solve the customer's problem. And it's not uncommon that if you're trying to hit something at a certain time, you know, your solution at the end is going to do it, but it's going to look very different than you thought at the beginning. So that's another part of the visualization collaboration that I talk about in the book. And OKRs really help a lot with this, right? Objectives and key results. We're hitting
Mhm.
this objective, and when we know we've hit it, these are some examples of some key results and what they should look like. Instead of saying we're creating an app that's going to do ABC. Well, that's nice, but you really want the OKRs to hit. So every sprint review is an opportunity to reevaluate that.
Yeah, you're talking about teams that are business oriented, that are product oriented. That's great. But in my experience, and I think that maybe you also have seen this, we just have like 1 out of 10 teams working this way. Most of the teams where I have been are just taking features because someone on top said, let's build this. I know
Yep.
that this will solve our problems. and no one even asks, right? So
Yep.
how can we, all those teams that are looking right now and saying, well, it's nice to see the business goal and the OKR, but I just got to build a window and I don't even know why, right? How can they move from this concept or from this way of working to the business goal, the outcome instead of the output oriented?
Yeah, so that's where we really want to look at the product owner in Scrum, right? And you have an excellent interview with Marty Kagan. So I encourage all your
Yeah,
viewers to go look up that interview you did. You
thank
did
you.
a great job. And Marty just lays it out flat. Like, product owners don't know how to be product managers. And
Yeah.
we need product owners to be product managers, to talk to the customers, look at metrics, and say no, right? But it's so important, that collaboration between a product owner and the customer or management. And it's a tough job. And we're not going to say, it's easy or anything, but that's where we got to look the product owner to be the leader in that situation and help the team understand, right? And even Marty Kagan said it, right? Your engineers are your best sources for innovation. Explain to the engineers what the problem is you're trying to solve. Let them come up with the features, not management or a product owner, or at least a product owner should collaborate with the engineers to come up with what the solution would look like. Let the engineers lead the way there. They're the smart folks. They know what can and can't be done, and they know the questions to ask.
Yeah, I totally agree. You mentioned, now that you mentioned that interview, well, that actually went into a place where if you have a channel called Scrum Express, he totally hated like this process, like these frameworks. Like he believes a lot more in just a pure agile way of working without any even Kanban. He didn't like a lot, and he was talking about safe, right? So now that you
Yes, he
mentioned
hates
this,
safe.
probably he hates safe. And I have to agree on many of the things that he said. And one of the things that I can remember was that if you have a product owner for a team, then you have a product manager, then you have
Hmm.
a chief of product or something. I don't remember the name in Safe.
Yep.
So it kind of separates layers between the business and the developers, right? So
Right.
that could be hard to do what you're explaining, right? If you have so many layers. So with that said, what's your position or your take around Safe? I saw you have also some certifications around
Yeah, I'm an
Safe. You have
SPC in
studied.
safe, right? And I'm a
I'm
Scrum at
also an
Scale trainer.
SPC. I
So,
wanted to be able to understand it, to be able to talk about it, right?
yeah.
And now that we are that, what do you think about it?
So I mean, look, I'm framework agnostic, as I tell people, right? I want to
Mhm.
bring the right framework to the right people for the right situation. I've been in safe teams. I am an SPC. I don't. The safe material is solid, right? Like, it's really good content, and it's a lot of what you see in the other frameworks too. It's how you
Mhm.
implement it. If you have a good SPC that's a good coach, um, it's more than just the training. They're going to help the teams get up and running. Yes, there are layers, or not, because in safe, if you go to their website, you've got the different tabs at the top. You can just start with a team, or you can do the next version up, or you could do full safe if you want. So in my experiences, I get to, work with management as well in teams. And so this is what happens, right? So you bring Scrum into an organization, management loves it. They're like, wow, you just took this one team and now they start delivering, and they can change, next sprint and work on something they weren't thinking of, and the customers are happy. This is great. We have 300 more people. Can you do more of that? Like, how do we scale that up? And it's a legitimate question, right? Because you're having success with scaling. You have to be careful with scaling, because it's not just, a machine that you're just reproducing the same thing over and over again. It's people. People are different. Different teams are different. Engineers are different than marketing. That's different than HR. So again, OKRs, objectives and key results. When people come to me and they say, hey, we want to be agile, like, help us with agile. Well, the first question I ask them is, what's the need for change? Why do you need to be, why? Well, first of all, what do you mean when you say agile? And second of all, like, okay, boom, you're agile. What does that look like? And so then we can start to have the conversation. There's probably something happening, maybe a competitor out there is really dominating the market and they need to adapt, or maybe there's something going on with their customers are leaving even though there's no really strong competitor. That should frame the discussion about why an organization needs to go agile, and then to say, well, this is the right framework, or even with the right framework, like this is the approach we should take at making agile teams and making it happen. It doesn't have to be a full-on safe enterprise implementation. It doesn't have to be Scrum at scale where HR and the janitors are Scrum teams. What is the right combination to get where we need to go? You have to set that goal. Agile's not the destination. What is the destination, and how is Agile going to get you there?
Got it. Yeah, I totally agree. I really like to get parts of each escalation framework and then just put whatever makes sense, right?
Exactly.
These
Yeah.
2 or 3 teams are sharing the same stakeholders. Let's integrate their planning, or let's integrate their,
Yes.
sprint review or whatever. But you take parts of what makes sense for each context, right?
And over
That's the way I
time,
like
it could change and it will change, right?
it.
So a lot of teams start off, with trying to do a Scrum at scale and they go to safe, and vice versa. Like if you look at John Deere, they just went Scrum at scale from safe, right? Because the opportunities and the situation, required it to. So I'm not favoring one or the other. I mean, I'm a registered Scrum trainer, registered Scrum at scale trainer, and safe. They're all very important part of the landscape today, and you got to have a good coach that'll work with leadership and the teams to bring the right recipe together to make the product, make it work for your customers. We always got to make sure the customers are in there too.
Yeah, safe looks like a safe first step for big companies, right? And
Yeah.
from there, maybe they can get to their own flavor. That's what I have
Yeah.
seen working also. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's great material. You've got a large network of trainers out there, so it's very understandable why a CIO or other executive would want to say, "Hey, we're going safe. We're going the full-on safe." And it's worked in some places, and some places it hasn't, and some places it's the other way around. So, yeah, there's options.
I have been in projects where in the PI planning, and I wanted to ask your opinion about
Mhm.
this. They, instead of planning the whole PI, they just plan for the first 1 or 2 sprints, and then the
Yeah.
other thing will come. Is that good for you? What do you think?
Yeah, that's and that's where the backlog in Scrum, it needs to be emergent, right? We don't have all the answers today that we can carry 3 months in the future for the quarter, for the PI. So I always tell teams, yeah, you got to have at least your you got to have at least what your idea of 2 sprints of a backlog is backlog ready, right? So when we say backlog ready, the teams looked at it, they've asked questions of the product owner's given them answers, they're estimated in story points or whatever technique you want to use, because you want to get them going on the first sprint. Now, as you go on in your sprints, you're always taking time out for backlog refinement. So in that backlog refinement, then you're looking at sprints 4, 5, 6, etc. You're always staying 2 sprints ahead. And so you're allowing that opportunity to maneuver, to pivot based on what's going on in the sprint demos and the sprint reviews. But again, even in safe, right, you have your objectives that you committed to at the beginning of the PI. You're always keeping an eye on those objectives. So yes, we're going to change, but we can still hit the objective. Or halfway through the increment, you're looking at it and you're saying, oh, at this point we didn't know this, but we have to abandon the objective, and that's okay. Now you're learning from it. How can you do better next time, to do better planning in PI session, that no, hey, this is an objective, we have the right people, we believe we have the skills and we have the knowledge to get there. How we're going to get there, we're going to have to discover that throughout the increment as we do it.
Makes sense. Okay. So one of other challenge that I had a few weeks ago was I was trying to promote cross functionality within a team that has just started doing Scrum, and one of the more senior guys over there, kind of the tech lead, if there's that, we're not supposed to have tech leads, but we do have them all the time, right? So, the guy was telling me, Hector, I don't see what is the advantage of being cross-functional. I know a lot of Java, and I don't care about any other stuff. I don't want to do testing. I don't want to do, back end, front end work. I don't want to understand. I am the best in Java, and that's all I care, right? And I was like, well, so how would you tell or convince this guy? Not convince, but how would you
Yeah.
present the advantages of a team, the cross functionality in a team, right?
Yeah. So we want it. So this is a good time to reinforce that in Agile, it's about the teams, and we want teams that can deliver. Um, they have everything they need to deliver. Now, yes, we're going to need a Java person. We're going to need a tester. But there's going to be times when, hey, as a Java guy, I did everything I need to do in this sprint. So what? I'm just not going to sit back and let my team, just keep working while I'm here, checking YouTube and all that stuff, right? So like, I'm going to step in and help. And I've never written automated tests, but here's a good opportunity. Let me learn, right? So it goes back to a teamwork discussion. Like, you may not have totally cross-functional teams where you have all the skills, but even within a team, like, can you help out the other positions when they're swamped? In the teams I coach, we talk about swarming a lot, right? So like, we're behind on testing. Okay, hey developers, stop developing. Coders, stop coding. You're going to be testers for the next few hours. So we're all going to get on a Zoom and we're going to run through these test cases and we're going to tell you what to do, when to do it, right? And then we're going to go blast through these test cases so that we can make sure that we've hit it. Like, it's great, right? Like, you have a passion, whether it's writing code or testing. Definitely, we're not telling you to abandon that passion. We're just asking you to kind of expand. We talk about T-shaped people. So you have a broad range of skills, but you're really deep in one way, and that could be your passion, right? But we're still on a team, and we're going to help out the other team members when, as a team, we're starting to fall behind. And that's how I approach it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Makes sense. Um, Regarding the topic of leadership, Dave, with these agile ways of working, with the Scrum teams working like trains, like very well oiled machines, at some point, the managers, there's this role called engineering managers,
Yeah.
software developer managers. What are they supposed to be doing? How has the role of leadership evolved from being the person that said what to do, how, etc., to these models where it looks like the teams sometimes don't need anymore this position? What do you think? How has it evolved?
Well, yeah. So in those positions, right? You're a chief engineer, you're a chief developer. Do you care about, as a leader, are you about a great product or a great process, right? So if you care about a great product, then you'd be a good candidate for, like, in, say, for product manager, or in Scrum at Scale, a chief product owner or a chief product owner, right? If you care about process, then you're kind of in the Scrum Master branch of Agile, or Scrum. So maybe you want to be a Scrum Master that helps other Scrum Masters, or etc. But in leadership, at those levels, we again want to honor the Scrum Guide talks a lot about servant leadership, right? So we don't want to be the micromanagers. We want to support the teams. How do we do that, right? So when there's a problem, as managers, we've also developed large networks. Like, we know people in the different functional areas, we know other VPs, etc. Right? So we can use that. Like, teams don't have that access. We can help teams out by using our network to solve the really hard problems that teams can't do by themselves. So it's a little bit of a shift. And I do teach a registered Agile leader at scale class. So that's where we go into those discussions about the different opportunities that leaders have to support Agile teams.
Got it. So let's leave the link over there to your
Okay.
trainings, right? Um, so another topic, interesting one, I think, metrics. You have seen
Yes.
them evolve, right? What do you think
Yes.
about metrics? Is there such thing as agile metrics, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for bringing this up, because this is something that, especially from my lean background, I'm a big fan of, right? We need metrics because I don't know if you've heard the term HIPPO, highest paid person's opinion, right? So that's HIPPO. Like, we don't want HIPPO. We want to make sound business and team decisions based on the metrics, especially Scrum talks about empiricism, right? We're looking at the metrics. So, and one of the things, there's I just did a video with Q. If you ever visit my channel, I do videos with Q, and he's has experience as a product manager. So today we just recorded something about don't obsess too much about the metrics, but then don't look at too many metrics as well. So pick the right metrics, and the metrics you look at can also change over time. Maybe your product is going into a different phase, or your team is going into a different situation. Pick a handful of metrics. My preference is also look at the leading metrics, not the lagging metrics. What does that mean? Well, if I get on the scale in the morning and I see that my weight is too high, okay, I know I'm overweight. I have a metric that tells me that. The scale tells me how many kilograms or pounds I have, but that's a lagging metric. At that point, it's too late. I'm getting overweight. So I need to look at another metric, maybe the amount of calories I eat in a day, maybe the amount of exercise minutes that I exercise in a day, right? So when I do that, I know that if I eat too many calories, I'm not going to be surprised when I step on the scale and I see that I'm overweight, right? So the calories, the exercise minutes, those are leading indicators. So over time, I want to be able to track and say, wait a minute, the leading indicator is not looking so good. I'm not going to be surprised if now I get on the scale next week and I see that it's gone up 5 pounds, right? So I just want to make that indication, like, don't get carried away. Sometimes I work with leaders that like have a lot of great ideas for metrics. Okay, pick 4, pick 3, and let's see if we can pick the ones that are leading indicators that will give us an early warning if we're going to run into problems. So for some teams, right, if you're looking for examples, obviously velocity, how many story points we did, although we have to be careful there too. We can't compare across teams. How a team, references their story points are going to be different, but it does give us an indication, right? But what are some leading indicators that the team can look at, that could indicate, in Scrum, we talk about the happiness metric, right? In your retrospective, how happy are you working in this team, in this company? And if you track that over sprints and you see that on a scale of 1 to 5, it starts at 4 and it's going to 3, and then it's going to 2, and then it's going to 1. Well, guess what? Your velocity is going to go down in future sprints. It's almost guaranteed, right? So look for metrics that are meaningful and that give you an indication early on that there's going to be a problem.
Yeah, this is a really good advice, right? Look for metrics that will help you be proactive with what's coming
Yeah.
rather than react to what's
Yes.
already
That's
not
perfect.
working, right?
Don't be reactive, be proactive, right? Prevent the problem from happening in the first place.
Sounds great. Thank you for sharing those concepts.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so let's talk a little about also a common thing that has changed a lot, and this is risk management, right?
Okay.
In the new ways of working, how have you seen the risk being, roamed or whatever, like treated from how it used to be in the past, right? What's your
Mm.
take on that?
Yeah, in the past, you'd have a product manager that would have a risk board, right? And then you would track the risks. And you mentioned ROAM, right? That's a part of SAFE, ROAM. Um, I think risks should be evaluated. Again, if we're doing things in an agile way, it's iterative. And if you're a Scrum Master, if you're doing Scrum, as a Scrum Master, from my training with Dr. Jeff Sutherland, you are the change agent of the company, and so risk kind of falls upon you to protect your team, right? To make sure that you're tracking those risks. Also as a lean practitioner, risks need to be tracked and identified, and either uh, it becomes mitigated or it becomes obsolete or whatever. That to me would fall upon a scrum master to track and drive to some sort of conclusion on those risks.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Um, so Dave, like 3 days ago, I was talking to my father, and he builds stuff, right? He's a construction engineer,
Okay.
and I was talking about Agile, and he said, "Well, that doesn't apply to me, sadly, because construction." What do you think about not specifically construction, but do you think that Agile could be applied everywhere, or there's certain things that have to happen, or certain conditions where
Yeah.
Agile makes sense?
Well, for construction specifically, I want to refer you and your dad to one of my colleagues, who's also a registered Scrum trainer, Felipe Engineer. He's actually developed Scrum training for construction.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, I'll send you his contact information later. But he's very popular. He teaches classes all over about how to apply Scrum in construction specifically. Is Agile for everything? I just had this discussion with my wife yesterday. It was pretty funny. I'm glad you brought it up. Agile is great for things that are complex. Things that you don't really know everything up front. This is what I told my wife the other day. Like, if we were going to paint the kitchen, do we do that in an Agile way? Probably not. We know how much paint we're going to need. We know how fast we are at painting. We can probably figure it out, right? But if we were going to redesign the kitchen little by little, like maybe that might be Agile because we don't know about the pipes behind the wall or whatever, and we might have to figure it out. So that so one of the things I do like, and what I've kind of done in my career, like I've been wanting to, and I do try to put Agile in other organizations other than software development. Or I went to a hardware engineering organization for a while. Right now I'm in a finance group, although it is writing software for automation, but I'm talking to people with a finance background who've never heard of Agile, and I'm trying to coach the teams to develop solutions for them. I think when it comes down to things that aren't that clear and things that are complex, I think Agile's a perfect fit.
Yeah, I agree. Good. Okay. So digging a little more in this topic, I have been in companies where they are trying to implement Scrum, for example, but then there's still a PMO, right? And there are still
Yes.
project managers. So some companies I have seen, train their project managers and becoming Scrum masters. Okay, but then there are companies that they still have the PM, they have the project managers, and then they also have their ACC or their Agile Competency Center, and
Yep.
then and these two entities are working over there in strange ways, right?
Yeah.
Do you see the PMO working together with Agile Competency Centers, or in the future, do you see the PMO going away? What's your take on if these two concepts can collaborate together?
Yeah, so you mentioned different options there, right? Like you could just dissolve the PMO and say you're all Scrum Masters now. I think so. I don't have a lot of experience in taking a group of product managers, project managers. I think there's a challenge there because you have somebody that did the what and the how, at the same time they cared about it. Now it's like, well, now you're going to have a product owner and they're going to talk about the what, and you're going to coach the team on the how and do it better. It takes a little transition time if you're going to do it that way. So I think there are some other options instead of doing it that way. You could have maybe have product managers really want to be chief product owners or product managers. Maybe that's where their skills and passion lie in a company, is building great product. But somebody's got to care about the budget, right? So, so an organization's got to make a decision. Does that go to the Scrum Master now, or does that go to a chief Scrum Master or release train engineer? Or we got to list out all the responsibilities of a PMO, and for that organization, what makes sense. Because a lot of times, different companies are different, how they do their budgeting, how they train program managers to do their budgeting. Sometimes it's a lot more, there's a central budget, or there's a central, team to do budgeting and things like that. So it doesn't matter, like if it goes to a Scrum Master, like there's another team that's going to help them anywhere. The most important thing though is, project managers also have relationships with a customer, right?
Mhm.
Like they know, who to talk to, and they're familiar with them. So how do you transition that, or should they still be in a role? And again, maybe product owner would be a good opportunity for them to go into a product owner role. But I also want to stress that, even if maybe they'd be good fit for product owner, but they don't have the skills, like the team should help. However, the PMO is absorbed into the Scrum teams is work with the new product owner or the new Scrum Master and help them to get up to speed and their accountabilities for that role. Because a lot of times I helped to get a bunch of teams up and running once, and one of the product owners came to me and they were very upset and they were mad, and they said, my team is making me not only write the stories, but write the tasks that go with the stories. And I said, tell them you're not going to do that anymore. Like, no, like Agile is a team sport. It's collaborative. Like they need to work with you. They're going to do the work. Let them write the task. Let them figure it out. Right. So answers will vary. It's very unique, but we have to be careful that the team doesn't become unbalanced. And then like you have scrum masters basically writing notes and getting coffee and doing all these, like, no, that's not it. That's not a part of being a scrum master either. So
Yeah, another classic anti-pattern, right? Just bring the
yes.
coffee, bring the breakfast, and that's it. Like the
Yeah. Well,
tacos if you're
I
in
mean, every
Mexico.
once in a while would be nice, but you know, you don't have to like, do all that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for sharing. So another topic, Dave, documentation. Do you
Yes.
believe that Agile has mistakenly in some companies or in teams devalued the importance of documentation, or what's your take? How have you seen documentation evolve with Agile?
Yes. So shared documentation is not shared understanding. Right. So and so this I learned from Jeff Patton. If you and your viewers know, he's very popular. He wrote the book on user story mapping. Right. So if you read his book, if you read his materials, this is where in Agile, well, or before Agile, right? Like somebody would write a big requirements document, like 50-page requirements document, and say, well, this is what you need to do. Just go do it. And you'd give it to developers, they'd read it. Well, actually, this is one of my first projects when I got out of college was, I worked for a major, um, uh, I guess I won't say the name, but they make airplanes. They make nice airplanes. And
Mhm.
they wanted me and the team to write software to help automate the wires inside of an aircraft. So you wouldn't know it, but there's a lot of wires inside of an aircraft, for the cockpit, even for the seats, because you have the lights and the entertainment center and everything.
Mm.
So this was a big challenge. Like it took a lot of time. And if they got it wrong, it took a lot of hours to fix. So we wrote a big requirements document and then we developed the software. And so it took like 3 or 4 months. I forget. This was 20 years ago now, but we were all very excited. We gave the first demo, and then we looked at the project manager or the person who's responsible for the overall project, and she said, "That's not what I was expecting." She said, "Well, what were you expecting?" I was just expecting a screen that just showed a button, and I pushed the button, and all the wires would be optimized for the aircraft. I said, "Well, did you read the design document that we wrote that went with the requirements document?" And she looked at me and she said, "No." So so look, I work in aerospace and defense, or in the past and currently, like documentation is important because you have to have a record of how things work and how things get done. But most importantly, you need to not just give documents around, but you need to have meetings over Zoom or face to face and go over the documents with people and make them understand. And that's what Agile does, right? It gives you the opportunities to have those conversations along with the documents. And Jeff Patton talks about how, user stories like a vacation photo, right? Hector, I can give you a vacation photo without saying anything. You can say, "Oh, Dave, you went to the beach, and looks like it was a beautiful day, no clouds, and it was your personal vacation," and most of that would be true. But then I would say, "Oh, Hector, let me tell you, I went to another country for this beach, and my flight was delayed, 5 hours, and they lost my luggage, so I didn't wear my swimsuit to the beach. You can't see that in the photo." That's where we have to have conversations with what it is the team needs to do. What is the problem the customer is trying to solve? What are the engineers, explain to the engineers a problem you're trying to solve. The documentation is just an artifact. It's just an output of, we had this conversation. This is what we captured, but you just hand it to people without having a conversation. You're going to run into the same problems we had with waterfall 20, 30 years ago.
Thank you for sharing. That's a great analogy for why we need the card conversation and
Yes.
confirmation
Yes.
of
The three
every user.
C's.
So yeah,
Yes.
that's great. Cool. Okay. Dave, I had another challenge. I just joined a transformation, and again, we were trying to deal with 1,000 engineers that have never done Scrum or Agile, most of them.
Mm.
And I landed as an Agile coach within like 6 teams, and one of them had again this guy, right? There's always this guy or girl, right,
Yeah.
that knows it everything and have been in the company for 10 years. And the company is the top of the industry in gaming, right? So
Okay.
Hector comes to the picture and tells them, hey, we're going to start doing Scrum in 2 weeks, and we need to, I need to teach, or not to teach, but I need to do a training about what Agile is and why it works. And the first question that I get from one of the persons is, why do I care about your training Agile? We are top of the industry. The way that I have been working in this company for the last 10 years is the way that got us to number one gaming platform in the planet,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, well, you're right, right? Why should I, how could I know something that you don't know, or what can I tell you that will help you get better if you are the best in the planet, right? So what would we, of course I didn't tell him that, but I tried
Yeah.
to do my best. But what would you tell these kind of persons that do not believe or have a lot of resistance to adopting agile practices?
Yeah. So, in that situation, I would say you are number one today. There's no guarantee you're going to stay at number one. You have competitors right now that are aiming for you, right?
Exactly.
So you're going to learn these practices because we're going to teach you how to, well, not necessarily, we're not here to improve technical skills. We're here to improve agility, right? Movement, because these competitors are coming after you. Look at the automotive industry. Look at how electric vehicles, look at Tesla. I mean, they basically like dominate the market where like now General Motors and everybody's going to electric vehicles, right? Like there's kind of this false sense of security when you get to success that like, hey, we'll just keep doing what we've always been doing. We'll be fine. History has shown that's when things start going bad. And,
Yeah.
congratulations, your company has demonstrated you have the technical skill to get to the top. Now, with the changing landscape, with a changing culture, look, I think Dr. Jeff Sutherland was saying that in the past 10 years, there's been more startup money than ever. And there's more startup companies now more than ever. And it just takes like now with all these websites like bubble.io and all these other, you can get a web app running in hours, not weeks like it used to be, where you had, even with the cloud, it's even faster now. So you got to be prepared that there's going to be somebody that's going to come up with some idea that's going to go after your customers. Let's implement Agile to help, and maybe it's an evaluation, right? Like, how are you listening to your customers and implementing their feedback? Uh, and maybe you come to the conclusion that, yeah, so I taught you all this Agile stuff, and yeah, maybe you guys are already doing it. A lot of times when I go into teams, I find they do bits of Agile already here and there. So I'm just there to kind of help on the loose ends and to kind of say, oh, you're already doing some of this. Let me show you some other things. Oh, I never knew that before. And I think that's going to help. So it's not like a college class where I'm going to teach you how to do Agile and then you pass a test and then congratulations, right? Like, as a coach, let's talk about it. Well, how do you do work today? And you probably do some things well. That's how you got to the top. But now I'm going to work with you in some other ways to keep you at the top.
Got it. Makes sense. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing, Dave. Um, Dave, could you share? I will ask you to share something, right?
Yeah.
Could you share a good story about one of the success or something that you have built in your career that you feel very proud of? And then that will be one. And then the other one would be, if you want, could you share some failure that will give
Mm.
the audience a good lesson learned so they don't have to do it?
Yeah, so the failure is with the story I told you earlier, right? That's probably the one with, we worked 4 months as a team and then we failed, because we relied too much on the documentation. Although that was, recovered in some way. That
Mm,
really taught me the value of Agile. That's when I started learning about Agile and a lot of these ideas we talked about in this interview. As far as my successes, is various examples of where I help coach companies, and those teams have then won internal awards, right? So like a lot of large companies every year, they do excellence awards or things like that. So I've had two or three sets of teams that I've coached where, in a year, they've been recognized by executive management as being awesome teams, and for the products they've delivered and the value they've delivered to the customer. The successes that I've helped with the teams to implement Agile, it's always come to the feedback they've received from the customer. Like, this is the best we've ever seen from any company. It's exciting to see the teams do well on delivery, but it's also well to see how they impact the customer, the customer's business. And that's really the first principle of the Agile Manifesto, right? To deliver working software to the customer's advantage, so they can beat their competitors. And it wasn't just software. I can't go too much into detail because there is some aerospace and defense parts to it, but I'll just say that there were teams that really came up with some incredible products that really impressed customers and management.
Got it. Thank you for sharing. You mentioned, and we have been talking all over about delivery, right? The Scrum,
Yes.
the Agile practice, etc. Do you think I have this feeling like we focus a lot on delivery,
Yes.
and then the discovery part is frequently abandoned, right? Like,
Yes.
we think we know what we need to build, and that's it, and we don't dig, we don't spend time. Even with teams doing Scrum, they barely do research and understand the customer and try to come up with stuff that will actually hit the business goals. What's your take on discovery? How can you promote this while you're working with Scrum, for example? How do you make teams do the discovery part?
Yeah, and this is where I teach dual track Agile, right? So you have a product owner who works with a customer, so and develops the backlog. Now, while the team is developing, you have maybe the tech lead, maybe one of the developers is kind of known as a tech lead, right? They work with the product owner to understand, what's the problem the customer is trying to solve and what's a possible solution for it, and help to write the stories as a product owner. Those become the stories for the next sprint's backlog, right? So the product owner and the tech lead work together to kind of stay 1 or 2 sprints ahead. So the engineers are involved in discovery. We talked about this earlier. Marty Kagan is a big, proponent of this, right? So it's like, work together. Your product owner is going to, and some teams, I create a sprint board where one half is discovery and the other half is delivery. So we even track what the product owner is doing. And so, like, they're more like tasks. They're not user stories on the product owner's side, but we know what the product owner is doing because we want to see that the product owner is either analyzing metrics or talking to the customer. And then if they need help from a developer, they can say, hey, can you come talk with me to the customer? I think we want to talk about a problem we're trying to solve or something like that. So you bring up a great point, and I really think this is where Agile is now. Like, we've come across the last 20 years where, like, Agile is a great delivery framework, but I don't think we've really scratched the surface a lot on the discovery framework. And this is where, if we can make this happen, it really prevents Scrum being mini waterfalls, like sprints being mini waterfalls. And we truly harness the power of Agile in this because we have a product owner that's not just writing stories, but working with customers, working with a team. And then they can shift every sprint because they're always out ahead. They're always doing this discovery at the same time there's a delivery. So Jeff Patton calls it the disco deli, right? Disco for discovery and deli for delivery. So think of the disco deli.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. Dave, how has Agile coaching and all what you have learned about Agile and read, etc., has affected your everyday life and interactions? I can tell you, for me, it has helped me with, for example, my relationship with my wife. So I try to understand when we're discussing or talking, where do I have to mentor, where do I have to train, where do I have to just say whatever you say, baby, that's it, and we go with that. So how has it helped you in other stuff?
Yeah, no, well, yeah, I mean, I have kids, so I set up a Kanban board for chores, and they
Oh,
get
nice.
excited, but then it kind of gets old, so then we try a different technique, right? So yeah, I just try to teach it to my family. It's like, let's regularly inspect and adapt, right? Same thing, with my relationships. Of course, there's a lot more facets, there's a lot more dimensions in relationships than just like getting software done at work. But hey, you know,
Yeah.
that's the thing, is we regularly need to inspect and adapt, and that's the crucial part here as an agilist, as an agile coach. I've got this little sticker here on my desk. I don't know if you are familiar with Dr. Alistair Coburn, but he
Hmm.
says, you know, this is the heart of agile. He says it's just these 4 words: collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. You've got different
Nice.
agile frameworks, but if you just really want to explain agile in a simple way to 4 people, all right, with 4 words: collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. And I keep this on my desk because sometimes I need to remind myself, especially when I talk to leaders, don't use a lot of buzzwords. Don't try to sound impressive with agile terms. Just talk about collaborating or delivering or reflecting and improving. Same thing with family. Same 4 things we want to try to incorporate with them.
Nice. Thanks for sharing. Dave, has can you identify any concept related to agile frameworks or whatever that has evolved in your understanding? Like, for example, for me, it could be story points. I used to think that they
Yes.
were the solution to planning, to capacity, and to everything. And now I'm trying to just do no estimates at some point if I can, right? So,
Yeah.
what would be your lessons, that concepts that have evolved?
Yeah. So when you read the Scrum guide, it doesn't say anything about story points. It just
Yeah.
talks about sizing. So, um, you know, with some teams, like, hey, if you can, if you can write stories so everything is about the same size effort, then just count stories.
You're done. Yeah.
You did 5 stories this sprint. Aim for 6. Right. Try to
Yeah.
improve every sprint. Agile is more than Scrum. Now, of course, I love Scrum. I'm a registered Scrum trainer and a registered Agile coach. I've recently become a trainer for Agile Kata. So if you're familiar
Mhm.
with Toyota Kata, this is
Mhm.
the Agile version of it. Joe Krebs has developed this and is becoming successful. I became a trainer earlier this year. You still apply the Agile principles, but you don't have the roles in the regular cadence like you do in Scrum, but it's still agile because it hits the 12 principles, right? Pick your challenge, your destination. You know, what's your current situation? Where do you want to go? What experiments are you going to do to get there, etc. You keep repeating. You know, you can go to agilecata.org or agilecata.pro if you or and your viewers want to know more.
Mhm.
So in, you know, besides story points, agile is, you know, it's broader than Scrum. I've never done XP, extreme programming. I would like to do it one day. I've read a lot about it. um, Again, there's different opportunities out there, and that's why I think the Agile Manifesto uh, will never be irrelevant. I just think it's going to be out there. But how we do agile, we're going to learn, especially now with Chat GPT and all these things on the horizon, right? You've probably talked about this a lot and you know about it. How is that going to change the way we work? Is that going to be another Scrum team member, or is it going to be something to help our Scrum team members? We don't know. We're going to figure this out, and maybe the frameworks are going to change out of it. So this is an exciting time, and Agile's not dead. I remember a few years ago, I was talking to an assistant vice president. She looked at me and she said, "You know, Agile's dead, right?" Like, really? I think she's wrong. And if she's watching, I hope she doesn't take offense to that. But yeah, I mean, some people have been saying Agile's been dead for years, but Agile is again, inspect and adapt, right? That's the beauty of it. These are the secrets that are going to keep Agile and Agile thinking around for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. Um, you mentioned ChatGPT. I use it all the day, right?
Do
Like
you
I use it to even respond to emails. Probably I shouldn't
really?
say this, but yeah, it's incredible, right? And it got me thinking in another question, right? So everyone that I talk about ChatGPT, most of the persons around me do not know about it, right? I have to teach them, hey, just please log in over here, and I have to set it up in their phones and everything, and I have to
Okay.
explain and go through the examples. And so you mentioned a lot of concepts that I didn't know of, right? So I am thinking that probably I'm missing other chat GPTs, right? That you know, because I see that you know a lot of stuff, right?
Hmm.
So how do you keep, for the audience that wants to stay updated with the latest trends about agile and keep learning, how what would you recommend? Do you follow some podcasts? Do you read a lot? Do you follow on Twitter? I don't know. How can we stay updated?
Yeah, no, it's been changing. Medium, there's a lot of good articles on Agile. LinkedIn, I do a lot of. I follow a lot of Agile. So follow the originals. The people that wrote the Agile Manifesto, Dr. Jeff Sutherland. He's doing a lot of. He's doing a lot with ChatGPT, by the way. He's posting interesting things he's finding. There's. You can follow the different companies too, like Scaled Agile and Scrum Inc. and Scrum.org. There's I do videos with Q, Luis Quintela. He's been a very successful Agile coach and trainer and product manager over the years. I don't know. I just seek out people who have made Agile work, and I just want to learn from them. And Joe Krebs, again, he's a PST. So I don't know, and it changes. And lately I've been doing a lot of YouTube. So, if you want to, again, if you start, I guess the algorithm takes over, you start doing a lot of Agile searches and then other things come up in your feed. So I can't say that there's one consistent source that I always follow. I always continually just seek it out and I kind of find it.
Awesome. Yeah, this will give us a very good idea of what to follow and who to follow and how to keep updated. Thank you
But
for
if I can
sharing.
make an exciting announcement, one recommendation for you and your viewers,
Yeah.
I am now joining the Boston University Agile Innovation Lab this fall. So I'm going to be a part-time instructor, and I'm going to help them with projects. So we have a LinkedIn site, and we're going to be posting material on there about Agile and innovation and product management. So if you don't mind, in the description, I'll give you the link. You can follow us, and you can get more of what we're going to come up with in the next year. And we're very excited about it. We're going to do a conference in January, I think, or in some time. But it's going to be where there's some other coaches and trainers that are going to be part of this innovation lab. And we're going to use Agile and product management to really help companies and students to be able to create those innovative products that are right around the corner. Maybe they were ChatGPT. We don't know, right? So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, of course. Let's put it in the description also, and I will be the first follower. So thank you for sharing.
Excellent.
Okay. Dave, one last question before jumping out. If you had a time machine and you could go back and meet yourself, just like Back to the Future or something, what advice would you give to your younger self? Assuming that there's a lot of persons over here, Scrum Masters, Agile coaches that are just starting, that wants to grow up a great career like yours. So what would you say to yourself?
That's a great question. If I would talk to my younger self, I would say keep learning. Don't stop learning. Don't think you always have all the answers. Be humble. Keep seeking out, right? Keep following, keep listening. When I coach, I always tell people, look for awesome Agile people and follow them, right? Listen to them. You're never going to know all the answers. And when you do, the situation is going to change anyway. So just stay humble, stay hungry. And everything's going to, I would tell myself, everything's going to be okay. So don't worry about a lot of the stuff you're worrying about now, because it's going to be okay. You'll be fine. So
that's great advice. Thank you. And I read somewhere that around 80% of the things that we worry about never happen, right?
That's
so
right.
Let's stop worrying, right?
Yeah, I mean, now that I'm in, later stages of my life, I won't say exactly how old, I think about, and I said this earlier, right? When I got out of college, I was interested in tools and how to use them. And now I'm learning more about, there's a human aspect to this. And now that's what got me into more, I want to share what I learned with, folks, and some things transcend, tools, and it's basically interesting. We're humans in the end, and we've got to learn how to work and live with each other for a successful, productive career, life, etc., whatever. So I really appreciate you, Hector, inviting me on your channel and doing this interview. I really had a blast. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. And I think this is one of my favorite interviews of all time. I really enjoyed it. I think that you have a way of expressing the ideas very clear and very understandable. very simple, in a very simple way. So I really appreciate this, and all my Latin American audience that are not the speaking English like their first language, like me. We will also appreciate it a lot. We understood a lot the idea. So thank you for that. Thank you for the conversation. We will add to the description also your LinkedIn,
Okay, yeah,
links and
please follow me. Yeah,
your social media.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So whoever wants to keep up with your content, that we're able to look over, right? So thank you, Dave. Anything else you want to add? I really appreciate the conversation.
It's been an honor. Thank you. You have a great channel, and you got great videos. So I really enjoyed being here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, man. Maybe we can have a part two soon. So
Just let
let's
me
not
know.
say goodbye.
And okay,
Awesome.
thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
See
Bye.
you later.